Welcome to Dickens County, and right behind me is a little historical marker. It talks about Anderson's Fort, and this was kind of where the county started in terms of what you think of Dickens County. Prior to 1875, there were kind of battles with many Native Americans, and that was kind of the time when they were driven out, and the county started to take some form. This was originally Bear District or Bear County, and later on Dickens County was formed out of that. Early on, people did not want to settle here. In fact, the first census in 1880, the entire county had 28 people, and then through the 1880s a couple hundred came, and then in the 1890s it started growing. They didn't think you could grow anything here. It was basically just big cattle ranches, and then they realized cotton was something that they could get going. And you think of this part of Texas, you probably think of oil, and later on oil has become more significant. I can actually see that evidence right in front of me, but cotton was really what grew it. And then there was severe drought in the 30s and the depression in the 30s, and more drought on in the 40s and 50s, and the population went up to 8,000 and then has come all the way down to less than 2,000. And so, 80% of the population has decided to not live here anymore. So we're going to learn more about Dickens County as we go. And but yeah, kind of interesting. This is where, in terms of the official organization of the county, right here, Anderson's Fort, also known as Soldier's Mound. This is where things got started. Our first town, or you probably call it a ghost town at this point, here in the very northwestern part of the county is McAdoo. And this is kind of interesting to check out. This was a town formed in the early 1900s, and it was a center for business. And so what I was able to find online, there were actually as many businesses as there were people in the early days. So people would come in from their ranches and farms, and they would do business here. But there wasn't that many people that lived here. And then the population did increase. The school right here that I'm standing next to was started in 1928, and other schools in the area consolidated, and everybody went here. So the population started growing, several hundred people. And then, kind of like the rest of the county, population moved away, got smaller. This school closed in 1985, and that was certainly the kind of the death knell. When schools close in the community, families are going to probably move places that are a little more convenient to get to school oftentimes. And so there's not a ton remaining. School's cool to see. There are some old businesses here. It was named after a guy who was the Secretary of Treasury under President Woodrow Wilson, and he was actually Woodrow Wilson's son-in-law. Something you do notice is there are tons of wind turbines. You can see them behind me, and they're all over the place here. So certainly probably a windy place. It's pretty calm this morning. You can actually hear all the birds. I think they're flying south for the winter, but they're definitely making noise this morning. That's about all you can hear in McAdoo this morning. This is on the map where it says Glen, and there's not much known except there was maybe a store here, and about 100 years ago it was called Glen. Probably wasn't a town. Sometimes places were just named places after who lived here. That was on I wouldn't say a busy road, but a main road here in Dickens County. Afton is pretty interesting. As I was driving here, I went through, I guess you'd say, a little community just north of here, maybe half a mile, and there's a school there named Patton Springs. And originally, this area was known as Patton Springs. And I could be wrong, but up there by the school, I'm guessing that's kind of where Patton Springs was. And then the settlement that eventually became Afton moved just south of here. But the name and the school area kind of remained just north of town. And that first settlement was named Beckton after the postmaster. His name was Beck, and it didn't last but a few years. And then around 1900, another settlement started. They named it Cottonwood because there's a Cottonwood Creek here, but apparently there was another community named Cottonwood in Texas, so they had to pick up something different. There was a song at the time called Flow Gently, Sweet Afton. And with the creek here, they decided to name it Afton after kind of the sentiment of the song. I don't know how big Afton ever got. It did have the nickname Little Fort Worth for a time. And obviously back then Fort Worth wasn't what it is now. But I can't imagine this was anything resembling Fort Worth. Maybe they were trying to attract people to come to check out Afton. But now it's a really interesting ghost town. I think this is an old cotton gin. And cotton, talked about how cotton was a big industry in Dickens County. And so pretty neat to see an old cotton gin. This says Post Office Community Center right here, this building, but obviously it had probably to do with the agricultural area as well, maybe serving multiple purposes. There's a couple abandoned buildings. There are a couple houses. There may be a couple people living here. But the school, like I said, is just north of here. There was an old church as well right there. So definitely some interesting things to see. Very sparsely populated and I consider a very beautiful part of Texas. It's been nice and calm this morning in terms of the wind, but now that kind of northwest Texas wind is starting to kick up. This is East Afton, and I wasn't going to come out here. It was just a little dot on the map, and I tried to look up any information. I couldn't find anything, but I went ahead and drove over here. They have a sign as you're entering the community, which not all the communities have, one of those signs that tell you where you're at. And then I pulled up here, and there's a store of some sort that was here, abandoned store with a tractor in front of it. I don't know much information. Heck, I don't know any information. So maybe somebody out there can let me know if they are aware. So maybe someone, in this area, Afton's not far from here. They just started a store here and named it East Afton, and the name stuck. And there's really, I see some cotton fields here, and there's a couple of houses and farms, but there's not too much left. As I was heading to Elton, Texas, I noticed a cemetery called Amity Cemetery right here at this spot. When I pulled up, it didn't appear there was a cemetery here, but there was a little path, and sure enough, you can see some headstones in the overgrown grass and weeds. And it's always interesting to come upon something like this that it's not really taken care of, even though there was a small little path, like I said, to drive up to. So very old headstones. I didn't really see anything modern, but was interesting nonetheless. On the map it says this is where Elton was, or is, but mostly was. Post office for 20 or 30 years, from the 20s to the 50s, and was very small, maybe a community of 50 people or so, and had a post office and a store, and that's about it. And there's a building here now. I don't know how old that is, or it's anything to do with the old town that was here, but when the post office closed, it moved over to Afton, where we were earlier, to that post office. But now it's just kind of a lonely spot along the road here in Dickens County. Hey, buddy. Hey, guys.